Pretend you're a rock and roll star.
You know, my voice carries, but...
Yeah. All right, good evening and welcome. Want to welcome all the members of the public who are in attendance. Want to welcome the viewers on our streaming platform. Good evening to town staff and to my fellow council members. It's Wednesday, May 24th at 6:30 p.m. and this is the regular meeting of the Moraga Town Council. I'm calling this meeting to order. I'm going to note for the record that all council members except Councilmember Teresa Onoda are present. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask our temporary, formerly permanent town clerk, Marty McInturf, who's back for a few weeks, and we welcome her to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you for being willing to pitch in while Yashin, our clerk, is on holiday. All right, there are no special announcements. There are no proclamations or presentations. Next is public comments and suggestions. This is time for members of the public in the audience to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Please know that there will be an opportunity to make comments on items that are on the agenda. If you wish to speak at this juncture, please fill out a comment card. You'll be recognized and called on. And while we very much want to hear from you, we would appreciate your comments to be limited to 3 minutes or fewer. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none. Marty, did we get any correspondence?
No. We received late correspondence for an agendized item.
But it's on the agenda. Okay, so we'll take that up. Although okay, we received it and we'll note it. All right. I'm going to close public comment. Adoption of the consent agenda. Does any council member wish to pull an item?
I wanted to pull item, which one is it? It is, I believe, 6.2B? 6.2.
6.2, the minutes. Okay, any others?
Negative.
Could I have a motion for approval of the others?
I move for approval of items 6.1 and 6.3 and 6.4 as proposed.
Second?
Madam Mayor, before we take that vote, can we take public comment?
Public comment, please? There's no public comment. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes 4-0 and 1 absent. 6.2, Carrie.
Yes. On page 2, under Mayor and Council Members reports, B, the item, Councilmember Hillis gave remarks on supporting legislation that MCE is endorsing, which he signed on. It was actually gave remarks on encouraging legislation that MCE is suggesting, for which I signed on to a letter of support. So there was no legislation. MCE was requesting that legislation occur, and I signed on to a letter that went to legislators encouraging that.
Got that, Marty? Okay. With that change, do you want to make a motion?
With that amendment, I move to move item 6.2,
Do we have
which
a
is
second?
the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have motion second. Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. The motion passes 4-0 with 1 absentee. Okay, next item is adoption of the meeting agenda. Anybody want to make changes, or can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Public comment? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absentee. All right. Next, reports. Scott, our town manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I don't have any now. I'll have some comments at the end.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Carrie?
Nothing to report.
David? Nothing. Steve?
So, thank you, Mayor. On the 18th of May, I participated in a virtual tour. Excuse me, on the 18th, let me rephrase that. On the 18th of May, I participated in a community meeting on housing conducted at the Hacienda de las Flores. It was an evening meeting focused on stakeholder engagement for the residents, and there were 6 residents who attended. There were very good discussions. The staff did a wonderful job, and the attendees provided input. That's all I have to report on that item. On the 20th of May, I participated in a virtual tour of homes in Berkeley and Oakland that have been electrified, and I participated in this at least partially as a follow-on to the potential adopting ordinance to electrify at least new construction in Moraga. All of these homes were remodels. There was a variety of technologies used, a variety of work scope. It's going to be tough to actually, one of my conclusions is it's going to be tough to sort of give a blatant dictation that, you know, at some point all houses need to become electrified. End of my report.
Thank you, Steve. All right, I guess I'm up. I have 2 things I want to talk about. First is the La Marinda Zero Waste Challenge. As you will recall, this is a friendly competition between Orinda, Lafayette, and Moraga to see which municipality could get more residents to participate in the Contra Costa Zero Waste Challenge. The idea was to get more households in our community to take small steps that can add up to be very large steps and a big impact on reducing our carbon footprint. The 6-week challenge is over. The results are in. Overall, the program was a success. 131 La Marinda households joined, and during the 6-week period, actions taken by participating households reduced the CO2 impact by 186,940 pounds, which is significant. Moraga entered the program and exited the program as #1 in the La Marinda communities. The final point totals were, and I'll try not to crow too loudly, Moraga 1.183 million points, Orinda 573,000 points, Lafayette 406,000 points. So just because the challenge is over doesn't mean we should stop our efforts at reducing each of our households' carbon footprint. Those who are enrolled, please keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for the difference you're making. And those who haven't enrolled yet, there's no time like the present. Just go to sustainablecocoa.org and follow the easy steps to enroll and see how you can help. The second item is that on this past Saturday, I had the honor and the privilege of representing the town at the St. Mary's College commencement ceremony. I was part of the procession along with the faculty, trustees, regents, and campus administrators. It was a joyous and inspiring event, and I particularly relished seeing all of the proud families and friends who were looking at the graduates and with great pride and joy. The event was another reminder of why St. Mary's is such a special and important part of this community, and we'll continue to work with the college on issues of common interest such as housing and making this into a premier college town. That is the end of my report. Okay, next, public hearings, the master fee schedule. This is an action item. We're being asked to adopt by resolution the proposed updated fiscal year 2023-24 master fee schedule. We'll hear a staff report, then we'll take council member questions, public comment, and then we'll have council member deliberations and decision. From whom do we have the pleasure to hear tonight on this? Annie. Welcome, Annie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good evening, Mayor Sauce and members of the Town Council and town staff. My name is Annie Tu. I'm here tonight to present the proposed fiscal year 23-24 master fee schedule for the town of Moraga. The town's master fee schedule has a summary of all the fees and charges that the town collects for various services such as permits and products. It contains all fees and charges attached to services delivered by each department. So next slide, please. Master fee schedule comply with our California Code section. There's a section number, I don't recall it right now, but it's to establish local fees. Master fee schedule allows for local jurisdiction to charge for local charges and fees for any type of services provided. And the town council is responsible for reviewing and approving local fees on an annual basis. The background, what I want to cover is that each year the town staff prepares and proposes fee schedule and the town council reviews. So I have been working with all the departments within the town, the police, planning, parks and rec, administration, and planning to develop these new fees. Each year the fees are amended to reflect the current cost and achieve cost recovery targets. The schedule complies with the California codes to establish local fees. If it's approved by town council tonight, we can update the master fee schedule. And these fees include all these other building, encroachment permits, land development, engineering, planning, park and rec, and police services. The estimated or projected revenue collected from these fees will be included in the fiscal year 23-24 and fiscal year 24 and 25 proposed biannual budgets. Next slide, please. The process that we follow is we establish a public hearing tonight, and before we got to this point, we did published the notices in the newspaper, and those notices were published on May 11th and May 16th of this year. There is a 60-day waiting period before the fees can become effective on July 23rd, 2023. So if council approves the master fee schedule, what we will do is go back to our office and update the master fee schedule and make it effective July 23rd. Fee adjustment criteria. When staff was looking at this, what we did was we looked at the hourly billing rates for each of the positions that is mentioned in your report. In your report, there are two versions. One is the clean version and one is the red line version. So the clean version can be found on page attachment B, and the red line strikeout version can be found on attachment C. So the fees are based on hourly billing rate for staff, and I take their hourly salary and I multiply it by a factor. And the fee adjustment is also based on the Engineering News Record, ENR, Construction Cost Index. Next slide, please. The way we calculate the fees, and I just want to go through this briefly with you, and what I do is I take the hourly rate for personnel providing the services, and this hourly rate for personnel providing services consists of, the actual hourly rate times any overhead and any burden cost. And with that, I get a number. And the department is responsible for looking at the time that it's going to take to perform that service. So we take the hourly rate, multiply by the time for the cost of service. So that's how we calculate some of these costs. Next slide, please. There are a couple of different categories within your master fee schedule. The first one is the general group fees, and this can be found on attachment B. Again, that there is a section labeled, general government fees. So these fees are based on hourly rate for staff services for the town manager, town clerk, senior admin assistant, etc. And it's also billed based on the department. There's planning director fee, principal planner, and for police, the police staff, public works staff. So those were calculated by administrative services, and what I do is I reflect the fully loaded employee costs, which again, I mentioned earlier, includes salary, benefits, and overhead. And also under general government, you can find other documents such as, documents when somebody wants a copy of the adopted budget or a wonderful ACFR, they can purchase it and the cost is listed on here. There's also notary services, photocopies, and et cetera in the general government section. Next slide, please. Parks and Rec fee is the next section, and Parks and Rec fee have added fees for activity guide, for commercial business advertising space for local businesses. So their activity guide, any local business can purchase a slot and advertise there to generate a little bit of revenue for the town. And Parks and Rec also updated some of the Parks and Rec fees. The increase is very nominal. And those can be found also on page, starting on page 3 of the attachment B. Next slide, please. Planning fees. So planning has added reference to the previously adopted affordable housing fractional in lieu fees. That's clarifying the language that was there last time. And planning department also have added building permit plan check with design exemption determination fee. Lastly, they have adjusted a lot of different planning fees to be based on hourly rate, because now they have a new rate. They take that fee and estimate the number of hours it's going to take to do the work and then charge accordingly. Next slide, please. Police fees is very easy. There's no adjustments this year, so it's pretty straightforward. Next slide. Public Works fee. Public Works Department adjusted their fees to be based on the employee hourly rates and cost of providing services again. They did update permit administrative fee, street storage permit fee, and plan revision to reflect the actual cost of service. Next slide, please. Development impact fee. That's also in your report. There's a section called development impact fee. And this year, we're adjusting it by 1.43% per the April 2023 ENR Construction Cost Index. This is to comply with the La Miranda Fee and Financing Authority, LFFA, Development Traffic Impact Fee Resolution 10-2016, based on a 2015 Nexus study. So we did chat with our town attorney earlier, and we are thinking of, doing another Nexus study, but certainly it's a very costly and time-consuming process. So maybe perhaps next year or the year after, we'll look into that and see what we can do. Next slide, please. So recommendation, staff would like to recommend that Town Council reviews and adopt a resolution to amend the town's master fee schedule effective July 23rd, 2023. Thank you. And department heads are here to answer any questions you may have with regards to their changes.
Thank you, Annie. Any questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. And I see Sean is arriving, so we'll take it as it comes. On page 13 of the red line version, we have a new category, maybe a new category, curb painting review, which is about 3/4 of the way down the page. And I'm wondering, what is that referring to? Is it intended for people putting their addresses on the curbs? Where else do we paint curbs?
I'm not sure. Is Sean here? I'm not a public works
Sean, can you come
expert.
in?
Oh, there. Oh, great. Sean's here.
Perfect timing.
There you go. Welcome, Sean.
Painting our address on the curb.
I heard that you may have a question for me, but I don't know the question, so if you could formulate it for me.
What does curb painting review consist of?
Is that related to addresses, to?
Yes, so, somebody wants to come in and paint curb addresses and such, or if they want a red curb painted, anything dealing with us analyzing the situation. So We have some standards and codes relative to discouraging painting of red curb. It's a maintenance issue. So we try to discourage it. And if somebody's asking for a special case, we would have to go out and analyze it. I think there is an ordinance or a policy that that's in certain cases we need to come back to the town council for a review. And that goes to the cost of that process.
If an individual resident wanted to paint their address number on the curb, as so many of them are, it's white background with black numbers, is that what this is intended for?
It's really intended on the review of the red curb situation.
The red curb, or is it for someone who wants to come and paint lots of curbs?
Yes, yeah, we would
So
discourage that.
it might be a permit
Yeah,
then, in that case.
yeah.
Okay.
'Cause we're not looking to go after the individual property owners, but somebody on the commercial side or red curbs in general.
Right. Okay. Well, it wasn't clear to me. Then on page 18, which is development impact fees, at the bottom, non-residential development, and there are several areas or next level down. Relative to residential, these fees seem low to me. Why is that?
Development impact fee, I believe.
For example, residential development, single-family detached, it's a total of $21,000, and for a retail entertainment, the total is like $1,700. It just seems to me to be out of proportion.
Councilmember, where's the one that you pointed out for the residential that you were comparing?
On page 18, the first,
Yeah, so with residential units, it's typically per dwelling unit. And then for non-residential, it's per square footage.
that's per square foot. Oh, per 1,000 square feet. Okay, I missed that. Thank you. And then in the same area, next page, page 19, down at the bottom, the second asterisk, it reads, any impact fee that is required for an ADU that is 750 square feet or larger in floor area must be charged proportionally, ... Is must or shall?
I mean, it could be a shall, but I mean, it's the same thing. We apply those fees for 750
Okay, I guess I'm...
square feet or more. So we're basically streamlining the ones that are less than that to encourage them.
I understand. I guess I'm used to using the word shall instead of must, and I'm nitpicking here. I
It's the
apologize.
same thing. I think when we do
Okay.
ordinances, we're a little bit more sticking to the I's and the T's and saying shalls, but when it comes to these, the must is the same as a shall.
Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. I'm opening the public hearing. Any public comments on the fee schedule? Marty, anything in correspondence? Seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing. Bring it back to the council. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'm having a hell of a time tonight.
Motion to adopt the Town of Moraga's updated fiscal year 2023-2024 master fee schedule.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Just to clarify that the motion meant to adopt the resolution.
Adopt the
that's-
resolution.
Is that acceptable to you, Steve?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? It passes 4-0 and 1 absence. Thank you,
very much.
Annie.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, next item is ordinances, resolutions, requests for action. California Building Code, this is an action item. Now, as the council will recall, we did a study session, a detailed study session on this a few weeks back. And as I recall, we directed staff to come back to us with language adopting the county ordinance and the amendment, with the exception of two pieces. One piece was the construction and demolition piece of the county code, which is less restrictive than what Moraga already has in place, so the council directed that we stick with what Moraga has. The second thing we did was we discussed the requirement that all new construction be all electric. We had requested that staff come back to us with language to adopt that. However, in the meantime, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in a case that has, in the abundance of caution, we're pressing the pause button on the all-electric ordinance just to see how this Ninth Circuit case and related cases resolve themselves, because it does call into question the validity or enforceability of all-electric ordinances such as this one and ones like it. So that is not, the all-electric ordinance is not before us tonight. That has been stripped out. So all we have are the parts of the county ordinance and the amendments that related to the issues that, as I recall in our study session, were acceptable to the council. So we're now back, and we're being asked to introduce by title only and waive further reading the ordinance that implements the changes. And so we do have a staff report, council member questions, then we'll take public comment, then we'll bring it back. But Mio and Afsha, I mean, is there anything new that you want to share with us? I know there's been some follow-up with the county. I'm wondering, is there information that's additive to what we already covered last study session that you would like to bring forward?
No, there is not anything new that we're adding except for what you stated, Mayor. The only thing new that we're adding is, I know that there were some additional questions from council members on, the state building standards and the parameters under which the county adopted theirs. So we have a subject matter expert from the county, Karen Diaz. She's a principal structural engineer with the county. And if we would like, we can do the presentation or not. And then we can just do Karen's, she's here to answer questions that we may have.
Well, if it's my colleague's pleasure, I would be in favor of focusing on this additional information from the county, because as I recall, that was kind of the one issue that was outstanding after our last meeting, was what was the basis for the factual findings that the county made in order to adopt their amendments that were over and above what the state standard was. Is that acceptable to my fellow council members, or do you want to get a refresh on the whole thing?
I'm good with that.
That works for me.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
If we would go that way, I'd appreciate it.
Perfect. I'm,
Actually, I do have to make a point of order.
Yes.
My apologies. So there was an update to the ordinance that was provided. It provides red lines. These were sections that already existed in Chapter 15, subsection 15.04. Those updates are redlined and have been given to all council members and also have been posted on our website, so they are accessible. No new information, again, has been added. These are just sections that previously existed that had we moved forward prior or with the ordinance that was given out, these sections would no longer exist. So we just wanted to make that amendment and that change.
Thank you, Mia. All right.
So I will introduce Karen Diaz with Contra Costa County Building and Conservation Department for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Karen, if you could step forward, not to put you in the spotlight, just wait, the bare bulb will lower down over your head in just a minute. Just wait for it. Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Did you want to say anything, or would you just like to field our questions?
I'll just field questions.
Oh, wonderful. All right, Steve, did you have questions of Karen? Just a
me?
guess.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, I want to confirm something, what is the agreement between Moraga and county with regard to utilization of the Contra Costa County Building Code that enables or gives us access to the county inspection services? Is it, and I've seen that we can, a reference that we just leave the code, state code as is, or that we have to approve the county code? Which is it?
I can actually answer that question. It is actually in your staff report. It's a
Right.
joint agreements of,
Right.
the 70s, which just provided that opportunity for Moraga to use Contra Costa County as their, building inspectors
Right.
or their subject matter experts as it pertains to the California Building Code specifically.
To the California Building Code. We don't have to adopt necessarily the Contra Costa County code?
Why don't we let Karen answer?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have very few amendments to the California Building Code. They're generally minor in nature. But I believe our agreement with Moraga is that we do the plan review, the structural and non-structural plan review of all your plans and the inspections on site. And we have always done them in accordance with the California Building Code, including any of the minor amendments that the county has made.
So is that an intent, or is that sort of part of the agreement?
I'm
Is
not
that
sure
known?
of the wording of the agreement, but it's the way we've always worked. We have not made a special understanding for any of the other jurisdictions that we review for.
Let me just clarify. I think my understanding of your question is there is a hierarchy here. There's the California Building Code, then there are amendments that local jurisdictions can make, which fall under the California Building Code. So California Building Code up here is the minimum. And the California Building Code, we all the jurisdictions, all the counties, we kind of like tier off that California Building Code. And typically, and this is very typical, what every jurisdiction does, whether they have their own building department or like us, we have a joint powers agreement, we go to that code, and typically what we do is we say, okay, let's do local amendments to be responsive to local conditions, seismic, climatic, geologic.
Topographic.
Topographic. So what we do is take that minimum requirement and then we say, oh, for the last number of years, we've seen a number of events occur or a pattern that's been occurring, and we need to be more responsive to that.
So the
Is
other,
that,
Yeah, that's true. And the amendments cannot, we cannot waive any of the California Building Code amendments. There are slightly more restrictive of
Right.
any local amendments.
and, is there a design basis that the state has that you guys have access to? And I went to the state website for the building codes and looked for the design basis, or it might be called something else, but I know it as a design basis. Do you have that? In other words, that shows in that code, what the state uses, what the seismic criteria is, what the climate criteria is, what the...
Oh, yes, those design requirements are very specific for every geographical location. The seismic loads depend on exactly where you are in the Bay Area, in the state.
So the state code takes that into account?
Yes.
So it's locale specific?
Well, it references documents such as ASC 7, which is the design guide for loading,
Okay.
for seismic
Okay,
loading,
well,
wind
that's-
loading, and that is very specific to every location.
Okay, that's very helpful to me. And do you create your own design basis then that you use specifically for Contra Costa Cow?
No, we use like AC7 for the loads, which sends us to the USGS, which provides the data we need for seismic design, for example. We, the California Building Code references ACI 318, which is the concrete standard used throughout America, and we use that by reference from the California Building Code. And an example of a local amendment is that the concrete code, ACI does allow plain concrete without reinforcing bars in for certain buildings. And we have found through experience over the decades that in our area, foundations of plain concrete without reinforcing do not perform well in seismic events. So one of our amendments is to require reinforcing in all our concrete, whereas in the Midwest or something, they have buildings that don't have reinforcing.
Thank you very much. That's great. Completes my questions.
Any other council member questions? Karin, thank you for coming. It's great to have your expertise in the room. I really appreciate it. Any public comment? Seeing none. Marty, anything in writing? Oh, wait, we did get a letter from Dave Berzoni. I'm just going to go ahead and read into the record. Dear Mayor Sauce and Town Council, I support staff's recommendation to not include a requirement to adopt the all-electric building code clause for new construction in the draft ordinance. I recommend that the council not adopt the increased requirements for EV charging spaces from 5 to 10%. Sincerely, Dave Berzoni. All right, I will close public comment. Bring it back for council member comments. Anybody want to?
I'll kick off. So this is a little bit of a difficult communication. And I want to start off by communicating my values. I value the state in that, second to the government, the federal government, it is who we defer to. And the state of California puts together a building code. And the documentation, including in the staff report, both earlier and tonight, specifically sets the building code produced by the state is applicable across the state. But that local jurisdictions in these 4 areas, if their jurisdiction is required, is shown reasonably to need something stricter, they're allowed to do that. Okay. I agree with that. I also value Contra Costa County, the building department, and their capabilities to administer the county, including providing inspection services to Moraga. And I value that. But I have a third entity here, and it's the citizens of Moraga, who I'm supposed to represent. And generally, I've never had anyone come to me and say, gee, I feel under-regulated. Put some more regulations on me, will you? And so those are the 3 values that I've got to trade off. And so when I see something that says, well, here's the state, and I do that as the base case. We must adhere to the state. And then I see additional regulations, but they don't necessarily, it's really not obvious that those additional regulations conform to the criteria given in the staff report as to why they should be enacted. I have problems with that. And most of these additional regulations they're more related to safety. If I were to classify, sort of generalize, they're more related to safety. And then when I look at safety, and I come from, major industry, my question is, well, why isn't, for example, the enclosed roof and putting a smoke detector in it, my question is, well, that's not really a local issue, that's a state issue. And if we've, in Contra Costa County, have identified that issue as a safety issue, we should be going back to the state people in Sacramento and saying, hey, guys, you ought to put this in the state code. Where do I see localization? I see localization, for example, and this is where your explanation, the design basis really helps me, is that, for example, a temperature, if we use temperature as the example, down in the Imperial Valley, they have really high temperatures, right? Well, I don't know what the state used for their code. The code is designed for across the state. So as far as I know, and maybe they again localize it in the state code, but I figured, well, maybe it's a temperature that they use. So if Imperial Valley's got a much higher temperature, they logically would have different insulation requirements. So, I'm kind of torn in that I support, and I don't think we're set up as an entity to take on inspection ourselves. I don't support that. But I do think that, if there's safety things, that ought to be going back to Sacramento. And I'm more comfortable now that the design criteria in the code is more specific to, or takes into account, localized conditions. And partially this is driven by the experience in major projects, by the way, where you get something called scope creep, where you set a design basis and then everyone adds a little bit more to it. And pretty soon you've got a project that is out of control. So these are the kinds of things that drive me. But you've addressed it very quick, not that painful. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Carrie or David, any comments? No, okay. I hear you, Steve. And I think this is one of those cases where we are relying on the resources, expertise, know-how of the county. I think it's worked well in this context, as it does in other contexts like other health and safety contexts. So I, with great appreciation for staff, for the follow-up work you've done based on the questions that were asked at the last meeting, bringing Karin here to the meeting. I think the findings of fact are very solid, and we can be relying on them. So I'm in favor of going ahead and adopting this, understanding that the all-electric ordinance is on the back burner until the cases work their way through the court. So would anyone like to make a motion?
I will be happy to do so. Now that I've made my thinking visible, perhaps far more visible to staff than they would like, I move for repealing and replacing Moraga Municipal Code, Chapter 15.04, Buildings and Construction of Title 15, and adopting by reference certain sections of Contra Costa County Ordinance Number 2022-35, which adopts the 2022 California Building Code, the 2022 Residential Code, the 2022 California Green Building Standards Code, the 2022 California Electric Code, the 2022 California Plumbing Code, the 2022 California Mechanical Code, and the 2022 California Existing Building Code, California Code of Regulation, Title 24, Parts 2, 2.5, 11, 3, 5, 4, and 10, and making certain amendments thereto, and finding the ordinance exempt from California Environmental Quality Act.
Steve, would you be amenable to amending your motion to include at the beginning, introduced by title only, and waive further reading of the ordinance that repeals, and then adding at the end with the red line changes provided by staff?
I so accept those modifications.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Did I take public comment? Yes. Okay, thank you. This is roll call? Okay. Councilmember Shapiro? Yes. Councilmember Wolke?
Aye.
Councilmember Hillis?
Aye.
Sauce is a yes, and we have one absence, so it passes 4-0 with one absence. Thank you very much, and keep us posted on the all-electric, please. Excellent. Okay, discussion items. There are none. Council requests for future agenda items? I see none. There are no communications. Town manager follow-up and announcements. Scott, did you have any closing wisdom?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I was thanking our county colleague there.
Thank you, yes.
I do have some final comments. I'm not sure I have any wisdom to part. So let me get to that. I don't think I have any additional follow-up from the items on the agenda. I do want to point out, though, we were talking about the master fee schedule, and Annie made reference to the Nexus study that was done in 2015. It was applicable, I think, in 2016. So there's been some new legislation for planning fees that we do that every 8 years for the planning fees. So next time around, we'll maybe later this year or next year, we'll start the process to look at doing another Nexus study.
And Scott, if I may, is that a jurisdiction by jurisdiction thing, or does the LFFA take that on behalf of the three entities? So that, just a question. I don't need an answer, but just
yeah, I'll find out.
We'll follow up on that.
Each local entity now, or city or county or town, they have to do this, and so how we approach it here, I'm going to claim new guy ignorance, but I'll figure it out. But I'll make sure we comply. Okay, so some items coming up. One of the council members made reference to the community housing workshop. There's some follow-up items on that I wanted to point out for the community. So that was a really good workshop that was for the community, and that went well. Just do know that our work with the State Department of Housing and Community Development, we're still waiting for feedback from our application. So we'll keep working on that, and we'll keep the council and the community up to speed on that. Anybody watching has any questions, give us a call or just check on our website. So we're moving along on that. Upcoming items. The police department is going to be holding a town hall meeting in this room, 7 p.m., June 5th. Public is welcome to come and ask challenging questions of its police chief. The Moraga Commons First Summer Concert's coming up on June 8th at 6:30 p.m. Community can go to the website to get more information. With summer here, we should also mention July 4th coming up, and there'll be information about the events that day and the fireworks display. And since we count on the public to help us, we do the fundraising, Adopt a Rocket, and so information will go out on that. Next council meeting will be on June 14th, and on that we have a few items of interest. We'll do the second reading on the ordinance for the building code. We will, your local sales tax oversight committee, independent report for the previous fiscal year. They met in this room last night, so that report will come back to you then. And we'll have the budget. The budget will be in front of the council. It'll be a public hearing, the proposed budget for the next 2 fiscal years, the operating and CIP. So we encourage the public to tune in or come in and ask questions as necessary. So that'll be the big item on that. There's a variety of other items on the agenda. I just wanted to point that out. That concludes your town manager's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. All right, so we are now going to recess into closed section for a conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2E1. So we'll just ask that the room be cleared, and we will turn off our microphones, and once we're all situated, we'll start that closed session.